Hello, everyone, and thanks for including me in this professional development segment of the annual Legislative Conference. Of all the people in the world, you chose me, and I'm honored to be here with you for this session because you are the game changers, the equalizers. And guess what? There are 50 million children in our public schools who are counting on us to get this right. And it's personal for me. You see, it's my children, and I know it's your children. It's that grandbaby you care about. It's your nieces and nephews and the kid across the street. That's what's at stake. And that's what I hope we can count on each of you to be all in for equity and all in for justice. So let me just back up just a second and give you a little bit of context and tell you a bit about myself. 1 year ago, after a vote of the delegates to the American Federation of Teachers National Convention, I took on the role of Secretary Treasurer, our union's chief fiduciary officer, and one of its 3 top officers. I've had an amazing and blessed journey, starting out as a poor kid with a stutter, living in Miami's housing projects. I'm the child of parents who taught me that the sky was the limit. And if I worked hard, respected those around me, and valued education, that I could be anything that I wanted to be. My parents taught me that perseverance is the key to success, and my mother and father demonstrated that belief in it, that belief in me early in life. When I was a toddler and I was just beginning to speak, as I mentioned, I was diagnosed with the stutter. My mom and dad, God bless them, took me around to every hospital in Miami-Dade. I was tested over and over and over and was finally diagnosed with this speech impediment, which I found out later is fairly common at that age. But starting in kindergarten, I remember not being fully able to get words out because of this stutter. You see, stuttering at that age back then, people automatically thought there was something wrong with your mind, that you can't think or somehow you've fallen short. And we all know how cruel kids can be. In many instances, the nicknames they made up for me were crazy. 2 come to mind, one scratch record or tape recorder. Having classmates who picked on me reflexively made me want to go hide in the shell. When the teachers asked for class participation, I shied away. But I had some amazing teachers who turned things around for me, like Miss Lewis, one of those teachers who I respect greatly. She really got it. She let me walk to the board to write my answers instead of having to answer out loud, or she'd let me whisper the answer in her ear, and she'd say little things like, I know you knew the answer. Then there was my speech therapists and linguistics teachers who would pull me out of the classwork to do my speech therapy. Part of that therapy was learning to control my breathing. But I didn't quite get a grasp on this until my music teacher, Miss Richardson, who brought it home for me how important breathing was to singing. My school had a huge chorus, huge elementary school chorus. Through Miss Richardson's class, I discovered that when I sang, I didn't stutter. It was like the clouds parted and the rays of God's sunshine radiated through. For me, singing was the easiest thing ever. Bottom line, what drew me into music was my speech impediment and the educators. It was the small village of helpers who taught me to overcome and persevere and overcome this speech impediment. Because of my mother's and my teacher's faith in me, I ended up singing a solo with my elementary school chorus, which comes back to me so vividly. People could not believe how this little kid who had been stuttering all through elementary school was going to sing the lead solo on We Are the World. And yes, I'm dating myself. Yes, this was the 80s, before some of you millennials were born. And guess what? I didn't stutter, not even once. From that point on, I knew I had to stay close to music. It was my saving grace, and it had required perseverance by my mom and my dad, my teachers, the village, my speech therapist, and also myself. Eventually, I became a college drum major, a music teacher, and a high school band leader. My love for music carried me forward. And as a side note, I do not sing anymore, except when I'm all alone and I'm pretty sure no one is around and no one's there to listen. A good teacher, a mentor, can instill skills and confidence that make a world of difference. And you all know this. I was reminded of this during the 2020 presidential election campaign when I witnessed 13-year-old Braden Harrington overcome his own stutter. He addressed millions of viewers last summer at the Democratic National Convention. That moment was incredibly special for me because Braden's national address was made possible because Joe Biden, now President Biden, boosted Braden's confidence and gave him advice on how to improve his speech. As for me, I grew up knowing that teachers had my back. I saw from an early age that people working together can accomplish more than any individual alone. That's what propelled me to become a union activist, and in time, the president of the United Teachers of Dade in my hometown of Miami, and then in our state organization, the Florida Education Association. So that's my story. Not so different from any of yours. Everybody has ups and downs and twists and turns, some low moments and some high points, some obstacles and some unbelievable triumphs. It's who we are. And now we stand at the crossroads of America. We stand at another beginning of school year. It's always a time of transition for all of us involved in education. For many, especially this year, the beginning of the school year is a fresh start. We've been through a lot. You may have heard our AFT president, Randy Weingarten, that we're in the middle of three crises: a pandemic that's surging across this country, an economic crisis caused by the pandemic, and a long overdue reckoning of racial justice sparked by the murders of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many others. The movement for Black lives, this racial reckoning, now calls on us to defend the very facts of history that we teach in schools, the honest facts regarding our nation's history of enslavement, Jim Crow segregation, and lingering impacts of injustice. No matter our color, background, or zip code, we want our kids to have an education that imparts honesty about who we are, integrity about how we treat each other, and the courage to do what's right. We want to raise critical thinkers who can hear the truth and draw their own conclusions based on the facts and on diverse perspectives. But the lawmakers who until just a few weeks ago denied the seriousness of COVID-19, some even called it a hoax. Some lawmakers who have denied resources to our classrooms and demanded sacrifices of our teachers. Those same lawmakers are now stoking fears about our schools. They're trying to divide us over the term critical race theory, an academic concept not even taught in our pre-K-12 schools. And they are using it to mislead people about the value of teaching history truthfully. We should all want to learn the facts about our shared past, even the hard truths. State bans on teaching honest history deny our kids an opportunity to learn perspective, to have empathy and compassion for friends and neighbors, and to have a clear-eyed view of our country. Joining together, we can demand that our schools have the resources to meet every child's needs with well-trained and supported teachers and lessons that help them to be better versions of themselves. My friends, this is our moment. We not only have to teach our children honest history, we have to make history too. We need to finally ensure our children have adequate housing and have food at home so that they can thrive and learn. We need to finally rebuild and fund our nation's public schools. Full funding for programs like Title I and special education will ensure that our schools can offer sorely needed programs and professional development. Things like social emotional learning, literacy, civics education, science and arts, including music. We need to support President Biden's plans to strengthen jobs in schools and to get families back on their feet. And most of all, we need to make sure that good trouble and secure voting rights for all Americans is right at the forefront of where we should be thinking, so that our children will be able to grow up and live and thrive in this democracy. We need to keep pushing ahead on the For the People Act, HR 1 and S1, which would expand voting rights and reduce the influence of money in politics ban partisan gerrymandering, and create new ethics rules. And we need to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, H.R. 4, so that every voice is heard and every vote counts. This bill would restore and strengthen parts of the Voting Rights Act of 1965. It would provide federal oversight of states with histories of voting rights violations. It would also ensure fairness in voting materials, polling locations, and voting opportunities. And it would stop partisan officials from messing around with the voter rolls. It's a tall order. All of these things, safe and welcoming schools in the middle of a pandemic, racial justice and teaching of honest history, and voting rights to save our democracy. It's a tall order, but we are up to the task. I know we are. Now, let's focus a little more tightly on education. My union is all in on reopening schools full-time for in-person learning with the right safety measures in every community, along with the tools and trust needed to connect, not just with teachers and school staff, but also with families, communities, and every service provider. We must continue to build trust and confidence in children returning to school, particularly those whose kids have been learning remotely and those who fear the microaggressions or the major aggressions that children may encounter in the hallways or in the playgrounds of our schools. But we must do more than physically return to schools. As important as it is to create a normalcy that we all desire, we must also put in place the supports to help students recover socially, emotionally, and academically. And we must reimagine teaching and learning to focus on what sparks students' passion, builds confidence, and brings learning to life so that all children have access to the opportunities that give them the freedom to thrive. Our union has developed a set of ideas to create a renaissance. Let me say that again, to create a renaissance in our America's public schools. You may have heard about the AFT Back to School for Everyone national campaign to underscore the importance of in-school learning. We want every child, all 50 million of them, in person, in learning, in schools and thriving. So we are literally knocking on doors from state to state, from town to town, all across this country, encouraging parents and students to come back to our public schools. We're helping our local unions to create school-based committees of staff, parents, and where appropriate, students to plan for and respond to safety concerns and to conduct monthly or quarterly safety walkthroughs in every school building. We're helping our school districts align health and best practices in teaching by reducing class sizes to reflect the CDC's 3-foot social distancing guidelines. As part of these best practices, we should eliminate the terrible practice of simultaneous in-person and remote instruction. I'll tell you this, I've conducted school bands all over this country, and simultaneous instruction is like trying to conduct 2 different bands at the same time. We helped roll out summer camp programs and other programs that provided academic support, helped students get back into routines and encourage kids to have fun. With all the stress and grief that families have been going through, we need to help children rediscover the joy in living and learning. We are promoting community schools to build trust and remove obstacles to getting kids and families the support and services they need. And this is a big one. We encourage school boards and school districts to use funds from President Biden's American Rescue Plan to fill shortages of teachers, and counselors, and psychologists, and nurses, along with funds from his infrastructure plan to shore up our schools. And while we're talking about it, teacher shortages, let me just talk about teacher shortages for a second, because before the pandemic, we had a teacher shortage. I'd like to mention the great need that we have for Black educators, especially Black male educators, from pre-K to 12, right through graduate school. It is so important for children, especially young children, to see Black men as a standard for academic excellence. We also know that our HBCUs, our historically Black colleges and universities, are vitally important to this mission. A high percentage of Black teachers are graduates from these distinguished institutions. So whether it's Southern University or Howard University, Wilberforce, or my alma mater, Bethune-Cookman University, beyond our friendly rivalries, we must support them all because they are all more relevant than ever. In fact, Let me pivot for a second and lift up an AFT member from Washington, D.C., who teaches his third graders about Juneteenth, the Tulsa Race Massacre, and Mary McLeod Bethune, the renowned education philanthropist and civil rights pioneer. Of course, he teaches his third graders in an age-appropriate way, but he does not shy away from these topics as his students get an honest account of history. Like many of us, this teacher, Raphael Bonham, of the Washington Teachers Union, is working to ensure that a new generation of children will know as much about Juneteenth as they know about the 4th of July. Hat tip to Raphael. I can't list everything that we're doing, but what I can tell you is that our union, this union, will not rest until all of our babies, all of our students, all of our young people have what they need to succeed. And the people who we entrust with the most, our prized possessions, our teachers, our cafeteria workers, our bus drivers, our counselors, our secretaries, our security monitors, are in the best possible position to help our students, to help them to have the freedom to thrive. There are more than 3.2 million educators teaching in America's schools. We are the voters who elect officials to represent us at all levels of government. We are the trusted professionals who millions upon millions of parents believe in. In the Black community, we are the worshipers who tithe on Sundays. We belong to organizations, old and new, that serve our communities. We pay taxes, we volunteer, we do so much more. And yet, unless we engage wholeheartedly in civic activism, it is not enough. From voter suppression to an unthinkable assault on the US Capitol on January 6th, our democracy is under threat. The notion that we can stand on the sidelines and let someone else do this work is wrong. No one will stand up for us if we don't stand up for ourselves. We all need to have the courage to take risk on behalf of righteous causes. Causes like racial justice, economic justice, and climate justice. When there is pushback about teaching real history, like lessons as basic and important as the writings of the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr., we cannot be afraid to engage. And if we want to get anything done, we have to do it around real issues that our communities care about. Issues like public health, quality education for all, family-sustaining jobs for a decent life. We have to do the things that make people say, my life matters, my voice matters, my vote matters. People need to feel community, a heart connection, a trust, and they need to see the value of this work. Our friends and allies need to see themselves in these struggles. We have to take on the issues that really matter in the movement for Black lives. And here's the best part. We can do this. And we know we can do this. It's been done before and we'll do it again. And we'll get closer to this thing we call democracy and justice. If we believe, like my parents did, that the sky is the limit, when we do this, if we work hard, if we get active in our unions and civic organizations, if we listen to our neighbors, and most of all, if we keep marching and don't get weary and don't get faint, we can do this. Our voices matter. We can speak up at school board meetings. We can organize groups of educators to work with school districts on better ways to teach and create the environment to thrive. Listen, whether it's litigation, legislation, demonstration, agitation, or sometimes sheer aggravation, we got this. Like our old civil rights chant says, ain't no power like the power of the people, because the power of the people don't stop. Or like our ancestors would say, we've come too far to turn back now. If we are willing to do what it takes to prove that we value education and democracy, then we can accomplish these goals. And just to be clear, I want to say it one more time, you got this. You've got the power and the agency to rebuild this nation and to build it back better. We can do it together, and the American Federation of Teachers is proud to stand with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation to make these dreams happen. I leave you in the words of a renowned educator, Marva Collins. She said, any average teacher can fail a child, but it takes an above average teacher to declare, child, I will not allow you to fail. Peace and power, everybody. Take care.